10 questions to ask your partner that are guaranteed to improve your sex life, especially if you really struggle to talk about sex. This video is for you. Hey there, I'm Lauren Consul. I'm a licensed psychotherapist specializing in sex and relationship therapy. Now, so many people are more comfortable having sex with their partner rather than talking about it with them. But in order to have a satisfying sex life, especially in long-term relationships, you have to be able to talk about sex. Because relationships ebb and flow, life circumstances change, bodies change, health changes, and all of these things impact your sex life. And if you aren't able to talk about these things or your wants or desires as they evolve, you may end up in an essentially sexless relationship or one with a mediocre sex life at best. So here are 10 questions to ask your partner that will help you get more comfortable talking about sex and sharing with each other so you can move closer to a sex life that you really enjoy. Now, these questions build upon themselves, getting more intimate, more vulnerable, but really helping create a foundation of safety and security to help you feel safer when you get to those more vulnerable questions. We'll start with a couple of questions talking about what it's like to talk about sex before we dive into the deep end of the content. Because these meta conversations help ease you in and create safety around talking about sex without getting too vulnerable too fast, which can make us do the opposite thing of what we're trying to do here, which is create safety and comfortability around talking about sex. So take each of these questions one at a time and don't do all of them in one sitting. You want to be able to really have these discussions, check in with each other, feel safety. Number one, what messages did you get about sex growing up? And not just the explicit messages, because often those were more infrequent or they're just kind of lip service, but more looking at the important implicit ones, because these are the subtle messages that we would hear or see consistently from what our parents, caregivers, or families were actually doing. And these are the things that really get internalized into our subconscious, and our subconscious is really strong. So these are the ones we want to understand. But because they're in our subconscious, because they were implicit, they can be harder to tease out. So you may want to start thinking about things like, how did your family, talk about people who were dating a lot or who were perceived as having a lot of sex, or maybe who had children outside of marriage, or how they thought how people dressed. Also think about things like, what would your parents or caregivers do when a sex scene came on in a movie? Would they cover your eyes? Would they tell you to leave? Would you never even watch a movie that had a sex scene? What about how your parents or caregivers would respond if you wanted to spend time with the opposite sex? How did they talk about bodily functions? How did they talk about things like puberty and body developments, periods? How did they label body parts? Did they use the proper names, vulva, penis, or did they use more colloquial nicknames, hoo-hoo, pee-pee? These are all things you want to be thinking about to help you get a sense of what were those implicit messages that you got. Also think about how those messages impact you today and whether there's anything you and or your partner can do to help challenge these messages. Number two, how would you feel sharing a fantasy with me? What makes you the most nervous about sharing it, and what would make it easier to share? Now, you may be going, whoa, Lauren, I thought we were easing into these conversations, and that feels real vulnerable. Now, I am not asking you, nor do I want you to yet share what the actual fantasy is. Really, what I want you to talk about is how you feel about sharing it, what comes up for you, what you're scared about, what you're excited about, what you're worried might happen, not the actual content of any fantasy. Number three, when do you feel the most desired by me? What is it about those moments that make you feel that way? How can we incorporate more of those into our intimacy? Now, we're starting to ease a little bit more into the content, but we're starting out with something that has already happened. You've already felt good about. It's been a positive experience about. You're not going to wonder what's going to happen, like future things. You don't have to have a firm, final answer. And you're always going to want to update it, because what made you feel desired at a certain age or stage of the relationship may not be the same now, and that's totally normal and valid. It's just about sharing with your partner what you're understanding about yourself now. Number four, how would you describe your libido? Do you notice any consistent or predictable ebbs and flows in your libido? Do you notice anything that decreases it or increases it? Again, here we're starting to talk about the content, but this is something that already exists. You already experience, and you're simply putting it into words. The other good thing about this question is it helps get you and your partner comfortable talking about something that you may experience differently and that it's okay and safe to have differences around sex, around things related to sex, and that it can still be a safe conversation. Number 5, what does foreplay mean to you? And this is one of my favorite questions because this is often not something that people think about a lot, and often partners are surprised by their partner's definitions, and I love that we can continue to learn about our partners. Now, I don't view foreplay as the 5 minutes before sex, and I want you to view it as a longer period as well. I want you to view it as starting from the end of your last sexual encounter. Because foreplay is about an electric, erotic charge that you continue to stoke and have going until you're ready to have sex. Think of it like a pot on the stove that you want to keep at simmering until you are ready for that full roaring boil when you're ready to have sex. So what do you like to do to help keep that pot simmering that's going to be able to keep that charge going, keep you connected to your partner and turned on? Number 6, what are 3 sexual memories we shared together that you really enjoyed? What is it specifically about those memories that make them some of your favorites? Now, this question is to help you practice talking about sex, saying the words, describing things, and reflecting on your own pleasure. Because again, this is building safety around these conversations while starting to get a little bit more explicit and vulnerable, but it's still safe enough because again, these are things that have already happened. You know you enjoyed them. You liked them. So it's not that worry of like, oh, what's my partner going to think as much, and more about let me get comfortable sharing and saying these things and let my partner understand me better. Number 7, what pushes on your gas pedal turns you on, and what pushes on your brake pedal turns you off. Now, the gas and brake pedal analogy comes from the amazing Emily Nagoski from her book, Come As You Are, which I will link below. She also has other lovely books and a TED Talk. She's great. But I want you to think about driving a car. And if you have your foot on the gas pedal and the brake pedal at the same time, you're not going to go very far. Now, let's say you have nothing on the brake pedal, but you also have nothing on the gas pedal. Again, you might coast, you're going to go a little bit, but you're not going to go very far. So we need to know what are the things that turn you on, push on that gas pedal, and the things that turn you off and push on that brake pedal. So we can work on pushing on the gas pedal while lifting off that brake pedal. Now, often I found that people have much easier time saying what they don't like, their turn-offs. Those feel easier, more concrete, more specific. The turn-ons can be almost harder because they're really vulnerable, because really the world's your oyster. Anything can turn you on, and sometimes it can feel overwhelming by that choice. But it's really important to understand not just what turns you off, but what turns you on. So again, we can push on that brake. No, we can push on that. So again, we can push on that gas and take off the brake. Number 8, describe a setting that turns you on and gets you in the mood. What does the space look like? Smell like? What do you see? What do you hear? What does the light look like? What about this setting turns you on? So we just talked about gas and brake pedal. Now I want you to set the scene. Again, we're moving forward. We're talking more about content, but now we're starting to go into this in-between space. It's not really past stuff. It's not really future yet, but it's a descriptive in that middle. So again, you're practicing what it's like to share what you're interested in, what you like with your partner, but in a safe enough way. Number 9, how do you feel about incorporating toys or other aids into our sex life? What might you be interested in exploring? What about it interests you? And what makes you nervous? Now, this can be anything from vibrators to blindfolds to lube to erotic books to candles and anything in between. As you can see here, we're starting to get deeper into the vulnerability and sharing some things that you might be interested in. And this can be anything from very vanilla to very kinky. Don't try to fall in any category because you think your partner wants that. What do you like? This has to be reflective of what you are interested in, and also sharing the vulnerable thing of what makes you nervous and excited about it. Now, if you really aren't sure where to start, I have a great quiz that I love. I'm not associated or affiliated with it, and it's a free thing. You don't have to enter any identifying information. I'll link that below. I share it with clients because it's a great way to start conversations about things you might want to explore. Number 10, what would you like us to do more of when we have sex? Now, this allows you to practice sharing what you want and like and want more of in the future, but it's a bit safer because you're talking about something you're already doing or have done, but just want more of it. Again, rather than sharing something totally new, which can feel a little overwhelming, but it gets you in this practice. As you can see, these 10 questions build upon themselves and will help you create more safety around sex conversations. Now, these conversations, again, should not be had in one sitting. You want to have them over time because we want to create the association in our brain that this is a safe thing to talk about, that it's going to bring connection, and our partner is a safe person to talk to about this. Let me know what question you're most nervous to ask your partner in the comments below, and be sure to follow along for more content on having the sex and relationships you deserve.